was job one, to underscore that predicate and to make clear to the Taliban that should they not uphold that commitment, the international community would be in a position to hold them accountable to that. Number two is working on these potential routes for departure. And I mean routes literally, and we've talked about overland routes, but also pathways like civilian airports. Well before the last military plane left, we had engaged in diplomacy with countries in the region, to include Qatar, to include Turkey, brought in the private sector as well to do an assessment of the airport, and our goal is to support a safe reopening of this airport just as soon as we can, for two reasons. Number one, to allow the provision of humanitarian supplies to the Afghan people. You need a functioning civilian airport to do that. But number two, of course, is to provide a means by which those to whom we have a special commitment to depart the country. That's what we're working on as quickly as we can. We're working to support the efforts of our partners on the ground, and this is a priority for all of us.
I want to change topics, if I may.
Well, let's take a couple more questions on Afghanistan, and then we'll come back. Yes.
Ned, so just to drill down a little bit, I've been speaking with an American citizen today. His parents, sister, and grandmother are stuck in Kabul. They tried to get out of the chaos, they couldn't, and State Department's telling them today that it could be days, and they haven't communicated a plan for them. And so my question is, what assurances, what confidence can you give them? Because it seems to them that you're telling them you don't have a plan. And then in the larger sort of numbers category, since we're doing numbers, have you gotten any American citizen out since the last flight left on August 30th?
So what I will say is that we are exploring all possible options to bring Americans, to bring LPRs, to bring those to whom we have a special commitment out of Afghanistan if they should choose to do so. When we have options for these individuals, and I say when because we have a commitment, and we are going to continue to do everything we can to support their desire to leave the country, we will communicate directly to them personalized instructions on what they should do, when they should do it, and how the United States government feels we are best positioned to help them do that. So I can't speak to specific cases, but what I can say broadly is that specific individuals in Afghanistan, to include American citizens and others, who may have recently decided they wish to leave the country or were unable to leave the country during the evacuation, or might decide tomorrow or next month or next year that they wish to leave the country, they will receive specific tailored messages from us as we develop and start to operationalize these plans. Yes?
Did you have a number for, have any Americans gotten out since that last flight?
I don't have data to provide on that front.
Two questions. One, the Taliban had showed interest that the U.S. would continue its diplomatic presence in Kabul. What were the reasons for why you moved your diplomatic presence from Kabul to Doha? Was it because of security reasons, or secondly, you don't recognize Taliban as of now?
It's not an either or. Our first priority is the safety and security of the American people. We've talked about this in different contexts today, but that certainly applies to our diplomats and other professionals who would be serving in any diplomatic mission around the world. And we made the judgment, for I think reasons that should be understandable to everyone, that it was not appropriate for us to maintain a diplomatic mission in Afghanistan at this time, given the security environment. Now, on top of that, there are other issues of recognition and what our diplomacy towards any future government in Afghanistan might look like. We feel that we are best equipped to approach any future government in Afghanistan from the team we have on the ground that is already operating on the ground in Doha. We are aided in that endeavor by the fact that a number of other countries around the world have offices in Doha where they have engaged with the Taliban previously, where much of this multilateral diplomacy has taken place. So we came to the judgment, as have many other countries, that approach from Doha was the appropriate setting to undertake this. Connor.
One more question on former President Ashraf Ghani. I think you call him a former now. Right? He has said that in his talks with President Biden, last conversation, which was reported today, that there were 10 to 15,000 Pakistani soldiers in the Taliban group who he's using the word invasion of Afghanistan. Do you see the foreign troops within the Taliban, foreign forces within the Taliban, who are now ruling Kabul and Afghanistan?
I'm just not in a position to comment on that, to confirm those reports. If we have anything more, we'll provide it. Yes, Connor.
On the issue of land routes, I know you don't want to give a lot of operational details, but can you just say whether or not that would involve any U.S. government assets helping people get out of the country?
You are right that I do not wish to provide any more details there. Yes.
Just another follow-up.
Yep.
There was a Qatari flight that landed today at Kabul airport. Was the U.S. at all coordinating with the Qataris on that? Have you made any progress in terms of reopening the airport?
So this is something that the Turks, that the Qataris, together with forces on the ground are working as quickly as they can to reopen the civilian airport. This was an endeavor that we continue to support in every way we can, because we believe it is important for our own interests. Again, that includes the potential to bring additional Americans, LPRs, and others out of Afghanistan if they should choose to do so, but also as a means by which to provide humanitarian assistance to the people of Afghanistan. We have coordinated closely with the Qataris, with the Turks. We had worked again, from a pragmatic basis with the Taliban on this question as well. But I'm not in a position to comment on specific flights that may land.
Congressman Mark Mullen, who apparently tried to make his way to Afghanistan, contacted the U.S. ambassador in Tajikistan. Can you speak to what contacts he may have had with the State Department and whether or not he successfully got to Afghanistan?
As you know, the State Department does not routinely comment on the travel plans of private American citizens or members of Congress for that matter. But we have made it abundantly clear that travel to Afghanistan is not safe, and it is something that we certainly do not recommend. We have a level 4 travel advisory issued for Afghanistan. We have issued a series of increasingly urgent warnings to the American people and by extension the broader public over the course of months and in fact over the course of 20 years regarding the potential dangers of travel to Afghanistan. When it comes to our missions abroad, every single embassy of ours, and this includes our embassy in Dushanbe, has a foremost responsibility to look after the welfare of American citizens. And our team has been intensely focused on assisting Americans who may have been exiting Afghanistan into Tajikistan in recent weeks. But I will leave it at that. Yes?
A follow-up to the embassies. The Undersecretary was saying you are in contact with countries that have still a presence in Kabul. What do you expect from European countries like the UK or Germany, or what are your expectations in general there? What can they do that you can't?
Well, before we get into the dynamics of what engagement with any future Afghan government might look like, a couple things need to happen. First, there has to be the next Afghan government. And of course, that has not been formally formed just yet. More importantly, the international community needs to get a sense not only for what that government is in name, but what it does in deed, before we are able to make any judgments about what is in our national interest, what's in our shared national interest for any potential practical engagement or not with any such future government. So what we're doing now, rather than talking about, well, who is going to have a presence on the ground or who is going to engage practically in what way, right now we're establishing a set of shared expectations for any future government in Afghanistan. And you have seen those shared expectations emerge in any number of forms. Undersecretary Nuland mentioned the UN Security Council resolution. We have spoken collectively and singularly as a G7. NATO has spoken to this as well. The Secretary convened a ministerial with some of the region's important stakeholders and some of our closest allies. So there have been any number of opportunities, any number of fora for us to establish this shared set of expectations, this shared set of criteria for what we collectively may or may not do vis-a-vis any future Afghan government.
But I understand that the Undersecretary was referring to the point that you'd still try to get American citizens out of the country.
Right.
So practically, what can countries like UK and Germany do right now to help you there?
Well, we are in this together, and I know that the British government, that the German government, there are other governments who are doing precisely what it is that we are doing, and that is conceiving of plans to help our citizens, to help those who have helped our governments and our peoples over the years to depart Afghanistan should they choose to do so. For obvious reasons, we're not detailing what those plans might entail just yet, but it is something that it is a shared priority across governments, and in every one of those multilateral engagements, there has been a discussion of the priority we attach to helping our citizens depart Afghanistan should they choose to do so. Take a final question maybe on Afghanistan, Jenny?
On the 100 to 200 figure net, is that exclusively based on people who have registered with the State Department? Are you working with any, Hill folks or outside groups who are in touch with LPRs and American citizens on the ground? And then I have one more.
So it's an inclusive figure. In the first instance, it was put together based on individuals who had registered with us, and that there were individuals who had registered with us prior to August 14th, and of course this was a large and expansive number because again, people register and don't unregister. Sometimes people register who are never in Afghanistan to begin with. So we whittled that universe down, but then we've also issued subsequent messages to Americans that they should follow these steps to ensure that they're in our system. So that is how we arrived at the ultimate figure of some 6,000 and the remaining 100 to 200 that's likely closer to 100. But anytime someone comes to us and says, I know of a U.S. citizen who is here and these are the contact details, those are details that we very much welcome. And so every one of you who raises a case of an American citizen here, it's one thing to raise it here. It's very important that you also ensure that those details are provided to us so that we can ensure that we're doing everything we can as appropriate to help these American citizens.
And your Special Representative Khalilzad, is he in Doha? What's his role going forward?
So my understanding is that he has returned from Doha. As you know, we have a team in Doha that is now led by Ian McCary, our former DCM in Kabul, who will continue to lead that office. As is often the case, however, we do have there are some cases in which we have a diplomatic mission, but we have a special envoy or a special representative. So just because we have an office in Doha doesn't necessarily mean that there is not the need for another position associated with it. Nike.
Will he still be at the State Department, though? Like, is he going to remain as that special representative?
He's returning here. He's a special representative. Nike.
Thank you.
We haven't announced any changes to titles or personnel.
It's appropriate now to have a special envoy for peace. His Twitter handle is...
Well, Matt, you were using some dated information, my friend. It is the special representative for Afghan reconciliation.
That's too long for... I'm talking about his Twitter handle.
Okay. I don't know what his Twitter plans are. Yes?
Thank you. So, the Taliban in China, during Secretary of State Blinken's conversation with the Chinese Foreign Minister Wang Yi on August 29th and August 16th, did the Secretary ask China not to recognize the Taliban bilaterally? And was there any discussion on Uyghurs who live in Afghanistan? Because there are fears and concerns they may be deported back to China. And if you could entertain preview Secretary, where will he be next Saturday, which is the 20th anniversary of September 11?
I fully expect the Secretary will mark the solemn anniversary of the 20th anniversary of September 11th. We'll have more details on that as the date approaches. When it comes to our engagement with the PRC, Afghanistan is an issue that we have discussed at high levels with the PRC for some time now. It was not only in the most recent conversations between the Secretary and Foreign Minister Wang, or prior to that, Director Yang, that this was brought up, but in other senior level engagements, to include Deputy Secretary Sherman's engagements with her counterparts, this was raised as well. I wouldn't want to characterize beyond that the substance of those discussions. I would note, however, that in order for a UN Security Council resolution to emerge from the UN, no country, no permanent member can stand in the way. And in fact, a resolution did emerge from the UN Security Council, and I'll leave it at that. Yes.
Yeah, another China-related question. So today there's a Chinese order that goes into effect. It's a maritime order stating that all international vessels must report to Chinese maritime authorities their cargo and other relevant information. And so I'm wondering if the State Department has any response to this. We got word from the DoD that they're saying unlawful and sweeping maritime claims, including in the South China Sea, pose a serious threat to the freedom of seas, including freedoms of navigation and overflight. And so, being that the State Department has made quite an issue of maintaining a free and open Indo-Pacific region, wondering what sort of reaction the State Department is going to have, what sort of discussions they may have with China, or have there been any connections with China or discussions with China about this edict that goes into effect today?
So at the core is the principle of a rules-based international order, and our steadfastness in standing by the principle that there should be a universal set of rules for all countries, large and small, to include in the maritime domain. This is something that we have discussed with our partners and allies in the region. It has been a staple of our discussions in the Indo-Pacific. It has also been a staple of our discussions with the PRC, and we have not been shy about lodging our protests and together, in many cases, with our partners and allies, standing up to unlawful, excessive maritime claims of the PRC. We will continue to do that.
Sorry, can I ask, has there been any connection with respect to the edict that goes into effect today?
If we have a reaction to that, we'll get that for you.
Thank you.
Issue. Last week, there was an agreement in this building, apparently, on allowing Israel into the visa waiver program. Now, when the law was passed back during the 113th Congress, I believe, Public Law 113/296, it's stated clearly, that version that passed, that Israel must cease its discriminatory action against Palestinian Americans. They were always denied entry and so on. And my question to you, because the version that passed clearly stated that Israel must satisfy the requirements and the parameters that you guys set. And my question to you, will the Biden administration ensure that this law is followed and that Israel will remain ineligible to join as long as it continues to discriminate in its entry policies toward Palestinian Americans?
Saeed, when it comes to the visa waiver program in Israel, and this, I believe, was mentioned in the readout of the president's meeting with the prime minister as well, we support steps in the bilateral relationship that would be beneficial to both of our peoples, and one such step is working together towards Israel fulfilling the requirements of the program, of the visa waiver program. The Secretary of Homeland Security, in consultation with the Secretary of State, is authorized to designate countries to participate in this program, the VWP, provided that the countries meet all the requirements. Our experts have been in talks. Obviously, in recent days, there have been higher level talks, and we're prepared to enhance consultations as Israel works on addressing the program's requirements.
Now, just a quick follow-up on the Palestinian issue, but you still hold Israel responsible to fulfilling these requirements, correct?
There is a set of requirements that any and all countries must fulfill in order to join the visa waiver program.
In the past few days, there was meeting between this, the Israeli Defense Minister Gantz and the Palestinian Authority President Mahmoud Abbas. There was a meeting between Abbas and Sisi. There's talk about a meeting between Bennett and President Sisi of Egypt. Are you involved in any of these talks? Are you, whether directly or indirectly, are there any talks between this administration and any of these, the Palestinians, the Israelis, the Egyptians on this issue?
Well, when it comes to Israel's engagements with its neighbors, with other regional stakeholders, or the Palestinian Authority's engagements or meetings, we would refer you to those entities to detail that. But what I can say broadly is that we applaud the parties doing whatever they can to maximize productive communications that we hope throughout the region, with Israel, with the Palestinian Authority, will reduce tensions and improve the situation on the ground. This administration believes that a negotiated two-state solution is the best way to resolve the Israeli-Palestinian conflict, and we have made clear on a number of occasions that Israelis and Palestinians alike deserve to share equal measures of safety, of security, of prosperity, and dignity, and that is what we continue to work towards. I'll take a final question. Sean.
One small one on India I have.
Sean.
I'll be brief. The European Union has recommended or taken a step toward reimposing travel restrictions on Americans, especially non-vaccinated Americans. Does the United States have any stance on this? Would the United States accept this or would it be upset if this were to go forward? Does this at all affect American thinking on reducing travel restrictions for Europeans?
Well, we are following this issue closely. We do appreciate the transparency and concerted efforts of our European partners and allies to combat this epidemic. As the conditions evolve, we regularly update U.S. travelers and encourage all travelers to visit our website for the latest information on COVID-19. We, as a broad proposition, look forward to the resumption of travel, travelers between the United States and Europe, travel between the United States and all regions, just as soon as it is scientifically advisable. As you know, the EU announcement also distinguished between vaccinated and unvaccinated travelers. It continues to be the position of this administration that vaccines are safe and effective, and in this case, they are effective for facilitating the travel to the EU as well.
Just two quick follow-ups, really quick. Did you see Israeli Foreign Minister Yair Lapid said that Biden administration's plan to reopen the U.S. consulate in Jerusalem is a bad idea? Does the U.S. have a response to that? And the second one is about Danny Fenster. I think you guys have said that you lost contact because of the protests in prison. Have you been able to see him or reestablish contact since then?
When it comes to our CG in Jerusalem, Secretary Blinken has addressed this on a number of occasions. In May, he said, quote, "The United States will be moving forward with the process to reopen our consulate in Jerusalem." We don't have any updates to share at this time. When it comes to Danny Fenster, yes, we have been in more recent contact. Let me just. As you know, Danny marked his 100th day in detention on August 31st. Yesterday, we continue to seek regular contact with Danny and spoke with him by phone, most recently on August 27th. We're also regularly in touch with the Fenster family as well.
Just on the Consulate General, so you're aware of this argument that's being made by some in Israel that you guys need to have specific permission, agreement from the Israeli government to reopen the consulate building as a consulate. There is a counter argument, and I want to know if the administration agrees with that, which is that since this consulate general was actually older than the state of Israel itself, and although the building was closed as a consulate, its staff was moved into the Palestinian Affairs Unit at the embassy, that it is not technically opening a new consulate or even actually reopening a closed consulate. Is that the argument that this administration is?
Well, Matt, as you just
holds?
aptly demonstrated, I don't think it does me or us any favors to weigh in on what is a complex legal and historical issue. But as the Secretary has said, we will be moving forward with the process to reopen our consulate in Jerusalem. Lalit.
India's Foreign Secretary Ashwardhan Shingla is in town. Do you know if he has any meetings in the building tomorrow or day after?
We will update you with any meetings, any updates to the schedule, and we'll provide those as we're able. Thank you all very much.
Thank you.